Yo, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Mostly Low Budget Movie Reviews. I am your host, Clarence, and this weekend we have another really big budget release. Should have came out last year, but they decided to wait for the big screen debut. And I'm talking about the sequel to A Quiet Place, appropriately named A Quiet Place 2. The first one did something like 340 million worldwide, which was a pretty big hit. And yeah, man, I think it's sitting at like 96% or something like that on the Rotten scale right now. Don't quote me on that. You know I don't fact check. But anyway, with that kind of success and that rating, sequel was bound to happen. And it's not a cash grab either. There actually was a lot of material to work with. If you haven't seen the first one, and I'll ask why not if you haven't seen it, because it's a really good movie. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to work with. If I'm thinking off the top of my head, when I saw the movie and the ending, I was thinking, well, they could rewind it, go back to the beginning. They could just continue the story forward. So yeah, I'm kind of curious as to the angle they took here. So without any further ado, let's get into it. A Quiet Place Part 2. It had something like a $61 million budget, if I recall. And pretty much everybody from the original family, at least anyway, including the father, spoiler alert, he died in the first one. Even he returns in this movie in the form of a flashback, which I will get to in just a second. But yeah, pretty much all the same players. So we start out pretty much with day one. And if you haven't seen the original, the significance of that is that, we pick up in the original after everything has already gone down. Now, spoiler free, but we start out with the alien invasion and we see everything that goes into that, or, at least a portion of it and how it all started anyway. And then it jumps to the present right after the events of the first movie. And again, don't want to spoil too much, but they have just figured out what the weakness of the aliens are, and the farm is pretty much compromised after the confrontation, and the father dies. So they kind of have to set out to find help, her and her three children, including a newborn baby. They're going to another location to find some help and resources and things. And shortly after setting out, they face some major adversity and they run into an old acquaintance in, the process. And he's not very encouraging about what's out there and their chances, and not very encouraging at all about what kind of help he's going to provide. However, her daughter, who is deaf, by the way. I'm talking to you guys assuming you've seen the first one, but the daughter is deaf, which actually plays a significant role in the movie and actually is its own character. More about that later. But she sets out on her own to follow this clue that she found. And that's kind of where I want to stop. At that point, we follow two different groups, and they face their own hurdles and obstacles and things, trying to figure out how they're going to navigate that. And they got to, come up with some solutions on the fly. And what did the pros think? Well, they're currently sitting at a 90% on the Rotten scale with 188 reviews. And the audience score is pretty impressive. It's a 95% with over 500 verified ratings. So very highly rated once again. But what did I think? Let me get to the positives first. I'm a sucker for invasion movies, and I always a sucker for seeing like that initial first contact invasion, and you definitely get that here with this opening. It's pretty intense, it's very entertaining. Love the way they set that up. And yeah, I mean, seeing that on the big screen, glad they waited to release on the big screen, I should say. Yeah, definitely did it justice. I like that opening a lot. Now, initially I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it being broken up into two groups with, one group basically just doing things for the current survival situation, and then the other group working towards a greater good and a greater solution. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that, but ultimately it worked a lot. I like that as a storytelling device because it added two different layers and it kind of broke things up a little bit, let us know the immediate threat and also seeing that there is a future to work towards. They also did that thing again where they used sound and silence actually as an additional layer, an additional character to the film. So sometimes things are quiet and sometimes things have sound to them, and we're still seeing action and things moving around the screens. Very effectively done. They did it in the first movie, and they did it effectively here as well. There is a hint of a deeper, more robust world out there, and we do get a little hint of that. More on that later. And the suspense, they did crank the suspense up quite a bit here. In particular, I really like the scene that involved the dock and some boats and a couple of our characters. Spoiler free, I won't get into it, but that's kind of where my negatives start. With the original, the suspense felt organic. It felt like it was just a part of the story. It didn't feel like it was manufactured. But that's not the case here. It's not quite as smart. Now, what I mean by that, and spoiler free without giving anything away, let me give you an example. So let's say you, I'm talking to you, yeah, you. Let's say you're injured and, somebody else goes off to do something for help, but they leave you in charge of a baby, okay? You have everything you need, no reason for you to get up or leave or do anything. You're injured after all, so you can just stay there and just take care of the baby until the other people get back. Would it be a smart idea to leave the baby there alone and then go up and explore the wherever? There's dangers out there, let alone creatures that are roaming around. And on top of that, you're injured. Would that be a smart decision on your part? You see what I mean? And one of the characters, the scenario plays out something like that. It didn't make any sense to me. It was just stupid. Especially going against this person's character. They didn't even seem like the person that would wander off and try to explore or do anything. So that just did not ring true to me at all. So the suspense factor, and it was, it was there and it was good, but it wasn't as natural as it was in the first movie. Oh, and one other thing that I kind of got a hint on, I kind of mentioned it earlier, they do tease this deeper world with more survivors and their interactions and how they might have evolved and how they might have gone about their survival. Because we only see this family initially, and then, obviously it expands with the sequel. But they hint at this, but they only barely touch the surface. I was expecting us to see more of this robust world they were talking about, and they never really got into it. But again, that's a nitpick on my part. That's not something that really ruined the enjoyment of the movie. It's just something that I wanted to point out. But I don't want to beat this one up too much. Ultimately, let me bottom line this one for you. Did I enjoy it? Yes, I enjoyed this one quite a bit. I would put this one right at an 87% on the Rotten scale just to stay consistent. I liked it a lot, not as much as the critics and the audience, but I am going to please. This is definitely a strong recommend for me. The logic of some of the characters and what went on here just didn't feel organic. It felt kind of forced to force some suspenseful situations, which I did enjoy those situations, but still, it felt a little forced. And in the first movie, it was a little bit more clever and weaved in a little bit better. Also, they didn't really expand on that promise of a bigger world out there outside of exploring a bigger territory. We really didn't get to interact with any of the other survivors that were out there. But again, like I said, that's a nitpick. Ultimately, this is a sequel that's bigger and better. Well, I won't say better. I'll say it's bigger and gives you more of what you got from the first movie, which is a good thing. That's what you want. And it did expand on the story, expand on the universe, that's for sure. Would I want a third one? Yeah, actually, I'm here for a third one. If they want to do a direct sequel to this one, to make it a trilogy and continue on with the story, because they left it at a good place where they were to kind of continue the story. However, what I would prefer they do is do a prequel. Go back to that day one and pick up there and show us the whole thing. Show us the military response, give us the background of the creatures, show us all that good stuff. That's the movie that I want. So if you're listening, Hollywood, and I know you're not, but if you were listening, do the prequel. That movie would be super interesting to see how they ultimately gone through the paces. I would definitely be there for a sequel. and a prequel, but more so the prequel. But anyway, with that being said, I'm going to close it right here. If this is your first time, don't make it your last. This is Mostly Low Budget Movie Reviews with Clarence. I also have a podcast, which I will plug now, Mostly Low Budget Movie Reviews, same name, with Clarence. It's on Podbean. We'll put the link in the description. Definitely go and check that out because you're going to get content there that you don't get here. So you're going to want to subscribe to both so you get the full scope of everything once I get my chops, going and I kind of figure out exactly what I'm doing. I'm brand new to this, still trying to figure everything out. So bear with me. I have a whole bunch of reviews up on the podcast that, they're, again, I talk about movies that you don't normally see, all the streaming stuff. And 10 to 12 minutes, you're in and out of there. So definitely go check out that content. Do some interesting things over there. But that's it. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate it. And I will be back very soon with the podcast because I do have an episode there. I believe the movie I'm doing is I Am All Girls, if I remember correctly. That's the next one I have to put up. But I will see you guys next time. Peace.